I always get pretty excited when I hear that other professionals use holistic techniques like Reiki. I myself am a Reiki practitioner and also pranic healer, so whenever I hear a professional like a lawyer that practices Reiki, I just think it's so fantastic, because I think anybody in any high stress level profession should be practicing Reiki. I am so excited because I found the most amazing man. His name is Duane Light, and he has a company named Peace in the Law, and he's a holistic lawyer. And for those people that know me, they know that I love meditation. I love to learn about frequencies and vibrations, and this man has the right frequency and an awesome vibration. And Duane, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, well, I'm a licensed attorney here in California for about 28 years now, and I'm a holistic attorney. For me, that means, first of all, I do everything I can to be a complete human being on my own. Well, the transition was quite a process. I've thought about this in the last day or two, and it really goes back to my early childhood, my childhood trauma. I was off and on with my mother from the age of 3 days, actually, in childcare at times. And when I was back with her for about 4 years, she was with a ex-Marine, alcoholic, abusive stepfather who beat me and abused me quite a bit. So anyway, I had a lot of personal healing to do, and almost everybody has some kind of trauma, deaths in the family, job loss, financial, climate, relationship, accidents, etc. So in the decades that I've worked on healing my own emotional trauma and getting my mind in a better place, I've done just many, many emotional healing and development workshops. I'm trained and certified as a meditation teacher. I'm also certified in a particular kind of very compassionate inner emotional work. So all of that, all of those years led me to a place where I became more interested in helping my clients as people, no matter whether I was representing them in any kind of a case, litigation, contract issues, real estate, bankruptcy, IRS issues, on and on. I practice in a wide variety of areas, but it's more this way of practicing where I help my clients to not only be more calm and centered, but also have resilience and strength so they can show up for themselves as a good witness.
So I understand that you're a holistic lawyer, and when I say holistic lawyer, I'm thinking of holistic medicine. When I think of holistic medicine, I'm thinking of Reiki or some energy work like that. So how would you describe yourself if I say Duane Light is a holistic lawyer, since you're not a holistic practitioner? Maybe you are. But when I think holistic, I think maybe acupuncture, I think Reiki, I think even massage therapist. So how would you consider yourself, or how would you describe yourself as a holistic lawyer?
Okay. Well, I am trained in Reiki, and I've used Reiki throughout this later part of my life in very profound ways with family. And also, while I was in Asia, I studied Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga quite a bit. And that also opened up my energy. So I'm very aware of energy work and the energy of situations. So that sensitivity is very useful. As a holistic lawyer, it's not only being more whole myself and taking care of myself, but holding the whole situation, seeing myself as serving peace and healing and resolution as much as possible. And that begins with my client. So I do a variety of meditations and practices to help my clients. There's movement work, stretching, certain exercises. When your body is toned and you can stand upright and solid, not in a like power way, but just in a confident, solid way, and still have this softness and humility and openness, and you don't walk into court or into deposition with your emotions churning. Because if you walk in with a lot of anger or defensiveness or fear or depression, avoidance, you're ready to pass out and run away, all of those will lead to a bad performance. And what I want my clients to do is to show up at these important hearings, depositions, interviews, in that kind of grounded, centered way where they've dealt with their inner world, so it doesn't come out at the worst moment under pressure. So the process I teach my clients involves breath work, meditations, emotional processing, this gentle inner emotional work, so you face your emotions in a very accepting, self-loving way, and you can feel into them or hold them or dialogue with them, but you want to work with those emotions before you're in these stressful situations. So there are also some polyvagal exercises to get you out of the sympathetic fight or flight mode and into the parasympathetic, more relaxed and grounded mode. And there are a lot of interesting little exercises, like just pulling on the ears right here, for example. If you pull on the musculature in front and behind the ear, that's part of the vagal nerve system. And it, like I can feel it right now, it just immediately starts to calm the whole body. So I have a variety of those kinds of things that I teach my clients. And part of it is also self-awareness. You need to know when you're stressed out, when you're being overwhelmed, when you're in anger, when you're in depression. And I also teach what's called the sacred pause, or the gracious pause. So that means when you're triggered, instead of reacting, you recognize, oh, I'm triggered. It may not be the best time to flash off a text or an email or call somebody.
Right.
But what happens is emotionally, when we have an intense emotion going on, we want to get rid of it, and we think that by acting out, I've got to clear this emotion. I have to respond. I have to get rid of this, and that's what moves us to make these really bad decisions and really harmful actions. In the circumstance of a law case, if you have two people constantly firing at each other in anger, attorney's fees are going to go through the roof. Your court case is going to last longer, you're going to be losing more sleep, you're going to be more stressed out, it affects your relationships, etc. So this gracious pause, you just recognize, okay, I need to take a break before I react, and you do it graciously. You tell the other person, oh, this is big, I need to think about this for a day or two, I'll get back to you. So you graciously create some space, and then you go do your breath work, run a mile, exercise, yell into a pillow, whatever method you use, or do this sort of inner emotional work and clear. And then when you're more clear, you've come to even some compassion for the whole situation. This is the best, is to recognize, wow, the other person is going through this too. And once you can start to have just a little bit of care and empathy for the other person, that is going to show up in the case. That is going to calm things down, right? So you're going to be more calm, and when you do decide to act, it's out of a conscious decision rather than an emotional reaction. So you decide what is going to be the most calming thing I can do here, and not in a giving in way. You're very strong and clear on what you need and what you're right. You just don't do it in a combative way. You just hold your space, but also recognize and show some care for the other person. That's the optimum. And I've seen cases, really difficult, bitter cases, just resolve in days when one person does that.
The legal field, there's a lot of emotions. Some people feel they've been wrong, and some people take the case very personal. It could be the insurance company or the defense attorney or the plaintiff attorney, and sometimes it's just emotionally driven. And I've seen it how that just turns bad sometimes. So I totally understand what you're saying. Now, if, say that you have a lawyer that has to pick jurors for their trial. You say, you're aware of your energy, and you kind of feel the energy yourself because you are aware of the energy around you. If an attorney had to go in a room and select potential jurors, do you look for anything in particular? Using the awareness of your energy to say this could be a good potential juror and this could maybe not a good potential.
Yes. So in jury selection, the first thing you want to do is, as an attorney, you want to be polite and professional and even likable. This is the ultimate in credibility, to be likable and trustworthy. So as an attorney, you are also on the stage and being analyzed by the jurors. So that's the best thing. The more just a nice person you can be, the better. And you want to ask open-ended questions and just get the jurors talking, especially if they have adverse views to your case. So as people are talking, you just observe and get a sense of them. Does this issue bring up anger or nervousness for them, or do they have an attitude? Can you sense a prejudgment, or are they favorable to you? Just who are they as a person? You can also sense if they're perhaps more persuasive or open-minded or more conservative or liberal. So in that questioning process, you have a person with you who's taking notes and watching the jurors and everything, and they're watching for these cues and attitudes and everything. So there's a general energetic sense of somebody that you get, like that first impression in the first 7 seconds. That is that's what people remember and hold. They might hold you to that first 7 seconds for life, right? So there is that initial connection, but it's really in the bringing out of their views and perspectives that you get a better sense of who they are and if you want them on your jury or not.
Thank you.
Yes, we attorneys all have that problem at times. You might meet a client at first and they seem very calm and rational and intelligent and like they'll be a good client, and then there's a turn. It can be one of the most difficult things, especially if you're in litigation. Once you sign on as the attorney for a case, you are there unless the judge lets you out. And it can be challenging to get out. So I did have one case where it turned out the client, this was many months later, I found out he had alcohol issues and anger issues. And I just had to coach him as much as I could to not bring those into the equation, and to be calm, to sit, to breathe, to breathe deeply, and also explaining that he's going to come across better and be more effective if he's more calm and likable, credible, persuasive. So that helped to some extent, and I just had to see that one through to the end of the case. So when I first speak to a potential client, I'm interviewing them as well as they are interviewing me. So I'm sensing their niceness as a person, their emotions, how they speak, their attitudes toward the situation and toward the other person. If somebody is very angry or hateful or out for revenge or to punish somebody, that's not going to be my client. I might drop a couple statements like that to test to see if they're open to a more empathetic way of approaching a case. And if they aren't, I'll give them whatever advice I can for the next step and send them on.
Thank you.
Also, with some clients, I can work with them. For some clients, just in my own being, just being calm and slow and kind to them and aware of their emotions and like acknowledging where they're at and how hard it must be for them, all of that. When somebody is truly heard and felt, they can calm down and they start seeing you as an ally and a friend. I'd like to share with you one of the major transitions in my law practice when this started coming more into being. As a young attorney, when you're interviewing a client, you're interested in the facts, just the legally relevant facts. So somebody goes off that, and I would interrupt them and say, well, what about this? Or I don't need that. Can you tell me more about this aspect, or what happened here? One of the biggest transitions in my law practice was fairly early on. When I was a young attorney, we're trained as attorneys just to look for the relevant facts, the legally relevant facts. So I would be interviewing a client and they would be telling the story and going off on what I saw as tangents or unuseful information. And I would interrupt them and say, let's talk about that later, or I don't need to know that. What about this? And I would guide the conversation and try to extract those facts. So what I found eventually, I remember the first time I did this, I decided to just let the client talk, or the potential client talk. And I would listen to them for 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes. And I would just do active listening, just acknowledging emotionally. And what I found were two things. First is at the end of that period, when they were done, when they felt that they were truly heard and seen, there would be like this exhale, this sigh. And at that point, I knew two things: that I had gained their trust. They had felt me as somebody truly interested in them and willing to listen to what was really happening to them. And with that, I could begin to advise them. I had an open ear. But also, more importantly, is I learned the whole gestalt of the situation. I learned about the relationships, the emotions, the past communications, the key events, which to a lawyer, maybe this, and this would have been the key events, but to that person, and maybe to the other party, this communication, this email, this text, was the key event and would be the key to resolving the case. And I also learned about the other people involved in the midst of this storytelling. So I would take notes and I would get this more holistic view of who they were and also what they really wanted. A lot of times a client comes to us with a certain kind of case and we think, oh, they want a lot of money out of this, or they want to end this, or they want to have an easy divorce as possible. But in their telling the story, I could see, oh, they really want this. This one thing really hurt them. And this action or statement from the other party would resolve that. Or us just including that in the case, in the negotiations, in the mediation, will mean a lot to them and help them to come to peace with it. So that is huge. So for beginning lawyers, I would say that first call, just really open. Do that deep listening, emotional presence and acknowledgement, and really learn all aspects of your client's case.
The fact that you said how listening is so important, because I don't think we do that enough. You see it everywhere. You're on a phone call, you're with your client, and you just want to get to the facts, and you're rushing because you have a meeting, you have a mediation, and your mind's already racing to the next event that you got to get to the next task, and you're not at the present listening. You just want to get the facts. And I think we all want to be heard. Like, we all want our story heard. And you are the lawyer, but your client's still the human being, and he feels he needs to get something out. And I think by you actually and actively listening, it means so much to them. You know, I feel that as a human being myself too. Sometimes when you have, you know, anybody in your surrounding, and they take the time to listen, like you said, you do feel relieved. You know, like you got it out, and now there's a better picture of what's going on, and you guys can move forward. So I think actively listening is a great point, and it shows a lot of empathy for your client and respect, right? That you're taking the time to talk to your client and listen.
Yes, it's very effective. And when I was more active as an attorney, usually once or twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, I would get a call, and I would know pretty early on that it was not going to be a client, that it wasn't my specialty, or not a client that I would want, but I would still listen to them and try to leave them with something, try to help them in some way. So I would often have these 15, 20, 30-minute calls with people, and I just saw it as part of my service. And that sense that they had made a nice connection with an attorney, that attorneys can be human and caring. So I just made that part of my practice, even just in those first calls.
Duane, what do you suggest when you have met, say, the opposing counsel, and you've met him, but before that there has been a series of emails where things have not gone very smoothly? So sometimes that leads to like a perception that this guy may not be the nicest guy or a jerk, and maybe you were even the jerk, right? And now you have a mediation and you're a little hesitant because you know this guy's a jerk, or you're being the jerk yourself. So how do you salvage that so you guys can have a successful mediation, even though that you started off kind of like on the wrong foot with a little bit of I don't know, impatience, frustration, but now you know you have the counsel in front of you. How do you salvage that and try to make it a successful mediation, kind of like a clean slate? Can you do that?
Yes, I've had to do that many times. I've litigated. Usually in litigation, most attorneys are, professional and businesslike and somewhat friendly. Some are not. I've been up against a couple attorneys that were just real jerks. So there's a couple things. One is I will not back down. There was one attorney, I was in a pretty major litigation. We deposed like 15, 16 deponents, witnesses, and he was just kind of abusive and obnoxious and coming up with stupid objections and arguing and badgering my witnesses, on and on. So at times I would yell at him. I would out yell him, and I would win the arguments because he was being a jerk and he knew it. But right after that, within a minute or so, I'm just treating him like a friend. I just let it go. I just see it as like a behavior, like a child acting out, and that, okay, let's get back to business. And I would actually be friendly. I'd ask him questions about his history or his last name and where that came from or whatever. And he saw me as somebody who was very strong, and I wasn't going to take any bull. But also he just saw that I would come back and talk to him, and we'd work things out or arrange the next thing or whatever. So anyway, those are more challenging, but the main thing for me is not to get triggered, right? The appropriate use of power or force is done in a way that it's not like hateful or attacking or bitter. You can be very strong and clear and solid in what you need to say, and you can say it with some force, but because it's not loaded, it doesn't land and create a reaction as much, right? So this holistic law, at least for me, is not about being weak. You can be incredibly strong, but there's an underlying okayness with it where you're not triggered. So anyway, I've been in mediation with attorneys like that, and you just get down to business. You recognize some good points. You might offer something to the other side that they have not even thought of. I've resolved cases like that a couple times. You just come across as a solid but polite, kind person as much as possible.
I think it takes discipline to have that attitude. when I've been into different mediations, and sometimes even the mediators can be like hostile, towards the plaintiffs. I've been a trigger myself when I'm like, why are you being so nasty? Like, you're the mediator, you're supposed to be neutral. And it's difficult to kind of like just take a breath sometimes and try to move it forward when there's so much hostility from, different parties, even the mediator sometimes. So I think it takes discipline. I know what you do. It's not something that it was overnight that you learn. So if you have a young attorney, or anybody involved in any type of situation like this, and we don't have that discipline that you have, how do we start with that discipline? So when we have a challenging occasion, would it be an informal settlement conference, a mediation, anything like that? What are the steps that we take to not be reactive and have the calmness and the patience to listen to the opposing people and get through the session without being triggered?
Well, there were many, many elements. A lot of meditation, a lot of movement, like Tai Chi, yoga, and Qigong, to strengthen the body actually strengthens us emotionally and improves our resilience. A lot of emotional healing workshops. And also, I've learned about neuroplasticity, and that's been really important in my own work with myself and with my clients. So the basic idea of neuroplasticity is that our brain can be reprogrammed. And there's a saying, what fires together wires together. And what that means is the neural pathways through our brain that become the common pathways we go back to again and again and again, actually more neurons and cells grow along those pathways, and those attitudes, emotions, behaviors get locked in. So for example, many of us might know somebody who's angry all the time, and there's something in their life, some trauma, some awful thing that started their anger. And when you're in a really angry space, you can become angry about everything. And if you don't resolve that anger, actually your brain will become more wired to react in anger to things in life. The same thing for sadness and depression, the same thing for fear and anxiety. The same thing for, the trauma states are fight, flight, freeze, and play dead. And as attorneys, we know about those. Fight or flight is, you're going to fight or you're going to run away. To freeze, we've seen our clients freeze in deposition or in trial on the stand, where your mind just goes blank, right? You literally shut down because you can't handle the stress. And to play dead is to give up and go away. And this is a big concern of mine, especially in divorce. Women often are so stressed by a long combative divorce that they'll just give up and walk away with nothing or far less than what they should get. So anyway, everybody is different in their attitudes. So the way you start to rewire your brain, retrain your brain, is you recognize that you're having this pathway, this behavior, this anger issue, this sadness issue, and you start to interrupt it. And you do that as gently as possible, like with the gracious pause. Oh, my anger's rising. I better take a few breaths, maybe take a day off here from the case or from the situation. And you work with that, and you think about how you want to be in this situation. What would be the best for your mental and emotional health? What would be best for the case, and what would help to de-escalate tension in the case. So every time you can do that, every time you can recognize the behavior or emotion and decide not to go down that path, and you need to do it in a self-honoring way. A lot of people, with their emotions, they become negative about their emotions. Like, damn it, I'm pissed again, damn it. And you're like pounding yourself, right? you're abusing yourself, or oh, I wish I wouldn't, like, freeze up and start shaking and go into fear and everything. So you need to have like this compassionate attitude toward yourself, because these traumatic responses link back to some trauma or a series of traumas in your life. In order to heal them and release them, you need to be self-compassionate, self-loving. So I teach one meditation called Touching Love. This is beautiful, goes through all the senses, and having ears of love toward yourself, and a voice of love, and a mind of love toward yourself, and eyes of love, seeing yourself in a loving way, and holding yourself, touching love. So, and also in the emotional facilitation work that I'm trained in, we do a deep body sensing relaxation exercise, and then we just ask, what's up, what's asking for attention, and it could be a sensation, an emotion, a thought, a belief, whatever is up. We just look at it with a welcoming and open attitude, like, oh, what's this about? What is this? And just meeting those inner traumas in this compassionate way, they can relax. They can go, oh, I'm seen, I'm heard, right? It's maybe your 8-year-old that was wounded or beaten, or a 15-year-old that was traumatized in school, right? So you take this compassionate approach to yourself, deal with it, and then that can calm, and that helps retrain the brain also, because it's those inner traumas and reactivities that drive our thoughts and beliefs, words and actions. Right? So it's body, mind, emotion, spirit. Right? So the specific thing I'm trained in is called iRest. It used to be called integrative restoration. And the idea is, by this integrative, compassionate looking within and dialoguing with yourself, you can resolve these things. You can restore yourself to how we're supposed to be as human beings: calm, centered, grounded, friendly, kind, open-hearted, right? We want to restore ourselves to that. So it's really that kind of inner work that's the key.
It seems that you do a lot of meditation, silent meditation, and I'm just curious, do you use a particular mantra when you meditate? You probably have different meditation techniques.
Yeah, over my life, I first took TM, Transcendental Meditation, when I was 18, and then through the years, I've studied, practiced, and taught a large variety of meditations. When I was in Asia, I studied and practiced Tai Chi and Qigong, Taoist meditations, Buddhist, yogic meditations. I sat Zen in Japan. I learned Tibetan meditations while I was in Tibet, and time in India and Nepal. And then back in the US, many more alternative New Age meditations and processes. So I have a variety of meditations that I'll use with a client, depending on who they are and what their beliefs are and what they're comfortable with. Right now, my main meditation is tuning into the heart, which is really the center of our higher self, our true self, that peaceful, loving, calm, joyful, wise part that we want to live from. So I just focus on that, breathe with that, and let that energy flow through my body, let that expand, and just do that healing on that kind of wordless level, just sitting in silence with the heart. Sometimes I invoke masters or teachers or angels. I've done a lot of different meditations, but it's mainly about the heart now.
Would you recommend any books that made an impact in your life and what has transformed you to this point that you would recommend reading?
Oh, let's see if I could think of special titles. I think more subject areas. So I've read quite a bit in recent years about neuropsychology and the the neurological retraining of the brain. I read books on emotional work. I think what I would recommend to people is there are so many good books out there around personal development. What I often do is I'll just go to a bookstore and I'll look at titles, I'll pull a book off, I'll read a page, look at the table of contents, and if it resonates with me, it's going to be useful to me. So that's what I would really recommend, is just go to that self-development, self-help section of a bookstore and spend some time and just sit there and do a little bit of reading and take home what calls to you. There are so many dozens of good books out there.
I hear that you are writing a book.
Yes, you did hear me say
Yes,
that.
yes, and I love to learn more.
Yeah. So this comes from it's the current title is The Law of Love, and it's probably for our culture, our society, our human species, if we last another 100 or 200 or 300 years. It's what law would look like if we were all balanced, healed, calm, heartful people. There's still a use for law. It helps to define human relationships and give us a track record and history of, in this situation, how did people handle it? How was it fair? What were the outcomes or the rules, the processes that were used to arrive at that fair decision? So it's for me, it includes all of those aspects that I've talked about: the physical exercise, stretching, strengthening, the emotional work, the mental reframing, and also the spiritual component of having something higher, some higher belief or understanding, and that kind of a desire for the world to be a peaceful place and for ourselves to be peaceful within that. If you have that kind of an attitude, then you can carry that into the situation, and the more compassion and empathy each of us bring into a legal situation, we are transforming law. We're part of that movement to move law to a more compassionate place. I also wanted to mention that in the realm of holistic law, there are already many, many holistic lawyers. They might not call themselves that, but there's a movement in law towards more mediation and negotiation. Those are taught more often in law schools now, and meditation is taught in many law schools. And there's transformative or restorative law in criminal justice, where instead of just looking at punishment for a person, you're looking at alcohol rehabilitation or drug rehabilitation or counseling, anger management, all of these things that a judge can order now, or that a defendant can affirmatively take on to try to heal the issues that cause them to commit a crime, right? And in family law, there's collaborative law, and many, many collaborative lawyers. And that what that means is, instead of taking this antagonistic, expensive, win at all costs, win-lose approach to law, you actually sit down with the other attorney and look at the whole situation and say, if we were to get to the judge in a year or two with this case, what's fair? What would the judge do? What's right here? And then you try to work with your clients and create an agreement out of that basis, just taking care of yourselves and each other and the children, the dog, whatever. What is the most fair outcome? So there are many attorneys. I'm pretty much out there as a holistic lawyer. I first came out in 1996, actually, with a card that was a holistic card. There used to be an organization called the International Alliance of Holistic Lawyers. They had about 600 members worldwide at one point. Judges, attorneys, professors, law students, legal support people, paralegals. And there are books out there right now, mainly for lawyers. There's one by J. Kim Wright that's a wonderful book about holistic law for lawyers. My writing is more for the general public. It can be useful for lawyers also, but I want this to be a guide for people who have any legal issue where there can be conflict or trauma, and describing some of the processes that I recommend to do that in their work, to come to a more calm, peaceful approach to it. And then it has sections on many areas of law and how you might approach those in a more caring way. Me too. So that's,
Do you know when it's going to come out?
I don't know. I've written probably 70 to 80% of it. I have procrastination issues and self-doubt issues and judgmental and all of that. Pretty much any writer goes through this. So I write in spurts and bits. When I'm inspired by something, I'll go write a section. So what I plan to do is just to take some time off, a month or 2 or 3, and go someplace in the country or go to Bali or something, and just focus on finishing the book. So I don't know when that will happen, hopefully in the next year.
Well, I look forward to reading it when you're done.
Thank you.
Duane, can you share an example of a client that you had that you helped that client transform or coached?
Yes. I had a client who's a high-level professional coach, teaches in corporations and business people, and also with family issues. And she was hired by a couple in LA to try to help with their marriage. They had real difficulties, just bitter arguments, and one of the parents was not kind to the child. There were issues there. So she went down and would stay with them for days at a time, or work with them by text or email or phone over the course of several months. And some progress was made. But at one point, the wife actually took their child and left the state and filed for divorce.
Wow.
And was very, very negative, very attacking. So my client was the coach, the person who was trying to help them. She was so stressed out about it. First of all, she didn't realize that as a coach, you don't have confidentiality privilege with the people you coach. So she was going to be called into court and would have to testify about the conversations and advice that she gave to them and what she observed in the family. And she was so stressed out about that she was losing sleep. She didn't know how to prepare. She was going through dozens of emails and texts and history and notes. So she called me up. She was going to be testifying, I think, later that week or within a week or so. So I met with her and I worked with her pretty intensively over the course of a few days. So part of it was to educate her about the legal system and how it works, and judges, and how they really want to do the right thing. You know, whether it's in procedure, some judges rule more on, they just want to see that the rules were followed and that it's a fair fight, that procedurally things go correctly. Others, and I think most judges, want to do the right thing. They want also the right outcome. So once I educated her about the trial process, the questioning, how to receive a question and pause and think about it, to give an intelligent, careful response, etc., how to be a good witness, and also some of the meditation and physical and breath work and mental reframing processes that I teach to help tune her up and strengthen her for the trial. So what happened in the trial, I attended the first day, and she had gone from, when I started with her, like I said, she was losing sleep, she wasn't able to work as much, she was losing thousands of months in income, her relationships were affected, her general life happiness, of course, was down. She was really having a struggle with it. So the transformation was she became more calm, more confident about it. I trained her in how to answer questions and do that gracious pause and then answer. So when she was on the stand, she just came across so professionally and calmly and thoughtfully and intelligent. Even under cross-examination, the other attorney was trying to manipulate her or falsely accuse her or shock her or shake her or make her angry, all of those tricks that occur. And she was so solid and professional through it that at the end of the day, the judge elevated her to expert status. And the other
Wow.
attorneys and I, each of us had been in law practice for more than 20 years. We've never seen that in the course of a trial. So when you're elevated to be an expert witness, that means that the judge recognizes your expertise and your knowledge of the facts of the case, to the extent that the judge is going to rely on your opinion heavily in coming to a decision. So she had just truthfully and calmly told about the reality of the family situation, the child getting locked in a closet when he was being a bit unruly, and the language and the hitting and various aspects of it. But that elevation to be an expert witness was a complete transformation to somebody who would have probably been a very poor, manipulable, scared witness, to somebody who was calm and confident and solid under pressure. That's the kind of transformation that can happen with this training.